We've had a pretty quiet start to the season overall for the Atlantic hurricane season. However, we have a tropical wave that is poised to start trouble in the Atlantic. That is just came off of the Atlantic continent in the bottom right center of your screen there. Let's take a zoomed in look. That wave is starting to organize. It might not look like much here because it's elongated, kind of low pressure, sort of starting to organize with convection. Let's take a look at what the National Hurricane Center is saying about this storm. We have a 70% chance of development within the next 7 days. A lot of text there, but let me just break it down for you. Over the next 7 days, this storm is poised to move westward towards the United States. Generally, we have at least 10 days out before this has any chance of making any sort of impacts. It's kind of a mainly watch for the United States. However, this is expected to organize in the next 7 days. The next 48 hours has a 30% chance to organize, so could actually organize in the next 2 days here. Generally speaking, let's take a look at what the models are saying ensemble-wise to look at strength and location. So first, taking a look at the Euro ensemble does not take that much eye to really see where we're looking at here. That large area where we have all those L's here. This is what's called the ensemble model. It basically runs a bunch of simulations of what may happen with this storm. It tweaks the starting conditions just by a little to give the wide range of possibilities of what we might expect. So let's take a little bit of a zoomed in look of all these kind of possibilities. And as you can see, generally speaking, I think the general consensus right now is at least a tropical storm of some sort of organization details within the next 5 days here. So 5 days, we're still plenty far out from the United States, and we are moving westward here. A couple of models that may stand out to you is a few of those pink lines actually indicate strong hurricanes, but really I don't think that's the kind of main consensus here. As you can see, those are very far in between. Maybe 2 model runs that are saying maybe strong hurricane or something. Generally speaking, we're moving westward. Let's look a little bit more longer range now. So for longer range, we'll switch to the American model. We were just looking at the Euro model. And generally speaking, looking pretty similar to Hurricane Erin, at least long term. I do want to remind you we are getting out to the little bit further end where our model runs are not getting too well. I also want to stress the fact that there are model runs that are as far south as like Puerto Rico and as far north as Bermuda. So our confidence level, I think, longer term for the storm is very low. Generally speaking, though, the ensemble members for at least the American model have the storm upticking in strength. So we have lots of them with those pinks and oranges designated hurricanes and stronger hurricanes. So that's something to pick up on is as the storm goes westward, the chances for strength increase dramatically. It's because we get into some more favorable conditions, we get into some more warmer waters, and the models are hinting at that. Now, let's take a look at a couple of different opinions for where this may go a little bit longer term, because I don't think it's the only one to look at here. Now, switching to a little bit longer term on the Euro model, now you can see how I am stressing the fact that we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. You can see how we have multiple storms north of Puerto Rico that are now not curving. It's called a recurve when it curves away from the United States. It pulls up north and eventually pulls up northeast. Lots of these storms and these ensemble members do not have the storm recurving. So we have a big split in parties between the American model and the Euro model, really meaning confidence is very low, generally speaking, for where the storm is going to be. So for path-wise, I'd say we are not very confident on a direction. For strength-wise, I can say we are pretty confident we might see our next hurricane on the Atlantic basin here. Next name will be Gabriel. Let's move on to a couple other things about this hurricane season that are up and coming. So while we kind of wait for a more descriptive details on where this next storm is going, a big part of this forecast is the ingredients. And first, starting off with our available heat content or our actual sea surface temperatures, you may see a lot of orange and red, and that means we have high temperatures in almost the entire Atlantic basin. The only area that I point out to you is this area I'm circling here. We'll zoom in on it in blue. That is actually where Hurricane Erin was. I know it's been a while since Hurricane Erin was there. Hurricane Erin actually cooled off the waters, and we're still seeing those effects there. Now, generally speaking, if a storm does get close to the United States, this actual detail won't really help us that much. Because as you can see, closer to areas like Florida, and especially the Gulf, is extremely warm in there. It did not get impacted by Hurricane Erin's energy consumption. So if a storm does go into this region here, there is plenty of available energy left. So let's keep going on to another kind of impact and another thing to look at first here. So seasonability wise, we are actually almost a week away from the exact peak of, at least climatology wise, of hurricane season. And a big thing I like to stress is hurricane season does not like to be very predictable overall. Just because we've had an early part of the season does not mean we're going to have a quiet overall end of the season. Actually, back in last year, we had a more back-loaded season in October and obviously September of last year. We had more activity than we did in the first few months of the actual last season. So just because we've had a quiet overall start to the kind of midpoint of the season does not mean the tail end will be quiet as well. Now, if something does form, let's take a look at climatology-wise where that may go as well. Now, this graphic is over the past 100 years, the number of named storms. Again, could be a tropical depression, tropical storm, most likely tropical storm if it was named, and where it's been over time. You can see a couple of hot spots. And the main hotspot I really want to point out right now, especially in this context, is the MDR, the main development region just east of the Lesser Antilles. You can see the waves come off of Africa in this region here, eventually make their way in this really commonly spaced area. You can see shooting between Bermuda and the eastern United States. But I also want to point out an area that might surprise you. That is just south of New Orleans. That is another hotspot in the entire Gulf region there. That is where we could see some homegrown tropical storms. And for a longer term, we're talking about the next 2 to 3 weeks, some models have it being more favorable for storms to form in that region. So again, something to keep in mind here. Let's switch over to the hurricanes. So this was named storms. Let's switch over to the hurricanes. Climatology-wise, obviously we have less hurricanes than named storms. But hurricane-wise, it looks like it favors, obviously, later in the life cycle for a hurricane. So that red kind of disappears from the MDR because it takes time for these storms to organize. More commonly to see hurricanes in the Florida region, and north of Cuba, north of Turks and Caicos, in that red and obviously orange regions. Those are the most common areas for the month of September to see those named storms and, of course, those hurricanes that we could be seeing for this month. So the last thing I'll leave you guys with is a recap of the 2025 North Atlantic hurricane season so far this year. And a couple of storms to point out. Number 3 there, Tropical Storm Chantal, which really didn't cause major issues, just some minor flooding along the coast. But of course, the main one that probably sticks out to you is Hurricane Erin. The first hurricane of the season and a Category 5 hurricane at that. You can see the major hurricane status in that purple, eventually going up, just avoiding the Carolinas and scooping over to the northeast, eventually becoming extratropical, no longer becoming classified as a hurricane. So generally speaking, we've had a pretty quiet season, especially for things that have formed. They've moved northeast, they've recurved. But again, there is nothing in our climatology books that say when you start the season this way, we'll end the season that way. It just doesn't, that's not how it goes. Things and ingredients and setups change, and generally speaking, we are moving into an environment that is more favorable for impactful storms on the tail end of this. The actual MJO, which is our Madden-Julian oscillation, which is just overall kind of controlling. It doesn't fully control all of the sinking and the rising motion, but we are expecting more favorable conditions for more rising motion, meaning more favorable for storm development within the next month here. And looking a little bit more moderate range, we could see our first homegrown threat other than our tropical storm Barry, which actually caused some major flooding in Texas, if you may remember back in 4th of July. So a lot to take away from this, but big news first. We got one system to watch out in the Atlantic here so far right now. Not a threat to the United States, and so far models are trending towards the same kind of solution as Erin. That does not mean it will be the same solution. It just means we have to keep watching, because again, we are really far out. Models 7 days plus out are not too good. There's a lot of conditions to figure out and a lot of things to solve. If you guys have any questions about the Atlantic hurricane season, don't hesitate to comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate a subscribe. We are on our way to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. We have over 47,000 followers on TikTok. I appreciate your guys' support. I do have live streams on YouTube and TikTok about this type of stuff almost every day, depending on activity levels. So let me know what questions you guys have, and you might see your question be answered on live stream. Have a great day and stay weather aware.